Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Marcos. Thank you so much, Cal State, Fullerton, TPUSA chapter. You guys rock. Thank you for hosting this event, and thank you for caring. Thank you for caring about this moral atrocity. I believe it's the greatest moral atrocity that our nation faces today. And that's why you're here, because you care. And I want to especially thank anyone who's here who doesn't agree, or maybe you're not sure what you think, because that's exactly what I think the place you need to be is, somewhere to hear opposing views, to hear someone else's position on this, to maybe change your position or maybe consider someone else's and challenge it. We're going to do a question and answer at the end. And if anybody has disagreement, I want to hear from you. And we welcome you to come actually to the front of the line. I want to start with the words of one of my personal heroes, somebody that I've admired since I was in high school, who has inspired me for over a decade. And she was a nun. So she was a little tiny nun, actually, barely 5 feet tall. And she would wear a blue and white sari. Many of you might know who I'm talking about the more I describe her. And she spent most of her life working with the dying, people that were terminally ill, people that were outcasts, people that were seen as unwanted by society. So think about the kinds of people that are on the streets of downtown Los Angeles that our society has forgotten and rejected. And this little nun and her fellow sisters would surround people like that in their dying moments with dignity and love and care. She epitomizes what it means to see human dignity, human value, even in people that look to the world like unwanted, like cast-offs. And this little nun was named Mother Teresa. And who here has seen or heard any of Mother Teresa's writings or speeches? Okay, a lot of us. I'm going to share some words that she has said that aren't typically printed in major papers or aren't typically used when mainstream figures talk about her. Because the reality is that while Mother Teresa is known for her works of love, her works of peace, her work with the dying and the lonely and the unwanted in Calcutta, India, Mother Teresa actually had very strong words to say about abortion. And whenever she had the opportunity, she would speak about it. And when she was accepting her Nobel Peace Prize, she had these words to say. She said, "The greatest destroyer of peace in the world is abortion. The greatest destroyer of peace in the world is abortion." And when I first saw these words, these written words from her speech, the transcript from her speech, I was deeply moved. I was in high school at the time, and I felt convicted. I was convicted because I wanted to do something valuable with my life. I wanted to fight for causes. I wanted to care about those that were the least of these, those that were the most vulnerable. And Mother Teresa was directing my attention, as she's directing ours tonight, to those that are the most in danger, to those that are the most unwanted today, seen as unwanted. And that has created the greatest destroyer of peace in America and globally. And so that's what we're here to talk about. Our governor of our state, Governor Gavin Newsom. Any fans of Gavin Newsom in the audience? It's okay, you can be a fan. Okay, no hands went up. That, by the way, doesn't mean that there's not left and right in this room, okay? There's a lot of people that don't like Gavin Newsom in the state. But many of you may or may not know this, but Governor Gavin Newsom is probably the most pro-abortion governor we've ever had in state history. Ronald Reagan, by the way, at one time was pro-abortion. He was pro-abortion and signed one of the first legalizations of abortion in this state. And then he would go on, when he became president of the United States, to become pro-life passionately and to sign the Emancipation Proclamation of the preborn child, of the unborn child, declaring that all human beings have the right to life, starting with those in the womb. So governors that start as pro-choice or pro-abortion can become pro-life, and I am hoping for that for Gavin Newsom. But let's look at what he's doing in our state. Let's start there. Because you as students have an incredible power to speak truth to power, to vote, to organize, to be activists. And we live in a state that just passed Proposition 1, making abortion legal through all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason. Governor Gavin Newsom just stockpiled 2 million abortion pills because he loves abortion that much. Governor Gavin Newsom just put up billboards using your tax dollars in states like Texas, telling women that you should come to California, we care, and have an abortion. Telling women, we will pay for you to come to our state to kill your child. Not we're going to come to your state to care for your child, to send you to Disneyland. We're going to come to your state. We want you to come to our state to kill your child. And, if abortion wasn't what we're going to prove it to be tonight, if abortion was a good thing, if abortion was a freeing thing, if abortion was a truly empowering thing for women, then I'd get in line and vote for Gavin Newsom. Then what Gavin Newsom is doing should be seen as noble. But if abortion is the intentional destruction of an innocent human life, a homicidal act against the most vulnerable member of our human family, then what he's doing is perpetuating the greatest atrocity that our nation has ever seen. And that's what I'm going to do tonight with my speech. I'm going to prove tonight, and we're going to begin with the question of what a human being is. I'm going to prove to you tonight that this is the greatest moral atrocity that we face, and that together it is our responsibility to rise up and to stop it. All of us, no matter our state in life, no matter the other things we have going on, that we all have a role to play in this fight. And so I want to start with this first question, which is, what is a human being? Then we're going to talk about what abortion actually is, that abortion kills, and then what our shared responsibility is to stand up to this moral atrocity of our time. And so starting with, what is a human? What is a human? Anybody have an answer for that? What is a human? Okay, we'll start here. Let's start with human rights. Before going to what is a human, what is human rights? And we're going to work back to what is a human. Who deserves human rights? Humans. Okay, good. I hear the right answers here. We're going to wake up here. Humans, everyone deserves human rights. The United Nations, for what it's worth, I know there might not be some fans here, but they declare themselves the governing authority globally on human rights, right? The United Nations says that humans have a universal and inalienable right to life. That's what our United Nations says. Our Constitution is protecting basic human rights, right? For Americans. That's the purpose of our Constitution. And so the idea that human rights are universal and inalienable is the idea that every human has human rights, that we possess human rights by nature of being a member of the human species. All of us have human rights. And so what are these inherent human rights that we have? Well, I mentioned the right to life. Our Declaration of Independence says what? That we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life comes first. Life comes first because you can't enjoy liberty and the pursuit of happiness without life. You need life first. And so everybody, and according to the United Nations, they say, the United Nations has a Declaration of Human Rights, and they say everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of the person. So the United Nations is kind of mirroring what our Declaration of Independence says. So what does it have in common, UN, our Declaration of Independence? What do all humans have a right to? Life. And that's why it's always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being, because you're depriving them of a fundamental right. So every person across the world, in every time, in every space, has a right to life. And so what is a human? What is a human? A human is a unique and individual member of the human species. Okay? So how do we answer this simple question? Let's dive into the science. I'm going to start with a quote from Peter Singer. Has anyone heard of Peter Singer? A few of us. Okay, who's Peter Singer? Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's a philosopher from Princeton. He's actually a professor of bioethics, believe it or not, and he's extremely pro-choice to the point of being pro-infanticide. So Peter Singer has actually made the case for parents to have the right to kill their newborn within the first 3 months post-birth of that newborn's life. That's this guy, and he's a chair of bioethics at Princeton. But Peter Singer says, there is no doubt from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is in fact A, human being. All right, no joke, smarty. I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? You open any biology textbook, you open any embryology textbook, and it'll tell you that human life doesn't begin at birth. Human life doesn't begin at 20 weeks. Human life doesn't begin at 15 weeks. Human life begins at the beginning, at the moment of fertilization, after sperm-egg fusion. That is the uncontested scientific fact. And when you hear people, whether it's people like Dr. Phil debating on his show, or you hear random pro-abortion pundits, or even our president saying, we don't know when life begins, what they're really talking about is, I'm not going to give human rights to human lives from the very beginning. I don't believe they're worth it. That's what they're really talking about. It's this construct of personhood versus humanity, basically saying that some humans aren't persons. What does that sound like? Some humans aren't persons? It sounds a little bit like slavery. It sounds a little bit like the Holocaust. It sounds a little bit like every single time in human history when the stronger group of people, the majority group of people, said to the minority or the weaker group of people and said, you are less than. You are subhuman. You are not a person because you do not share the right race, you do not share the right abilities, or you do not share the right level of development. And that's the message that we send, the pro-choice side sends to the preborn child that says, you are not developed enough. That's your crime. You are not developed enough. And worse, you are dependent. Well, guess who else is dependent? Every single person attached to any machine in a hospital. A newborn crying for his or her mother who cannot survive on his or her own. A 13-year-old who just got in a brutal car accident and is laying in a hospital bed and needs the support in order to recover. And without that support, he or she would die. An elderly person, maybe suffering dementia, who left by themselves would die. We all, at some point in our life, are going to be dependent, not just before birth. And yet somehow we bought this lie that you are subhuman if you are dependent, that you are subhuman if you are little, that you are subhuman if you are less developed. The scientific fact of when life begins is crystal clear. And so the question that rages is, will we recognize that human life's rights? A few things to share. When does the heartbeat start? It's amazing to look at the development of a child in the womb. I am convinced that if every single American looked at the development of a child in the womb, more minds would change on abortion than ever have before. But people are simply blind. They don't pay attention and they don't connect the dots. The heartbeat starts at just 3.5 weeks from fertilization. As little as 18 days from fertilization, that heart of that child is already beating. Brain waves by 6 weeks in just a couple days can already be detected in that developing embryo. Independent movement is starting even at the end of the first trimester. By 8 weeks and 2 days, that child is already getting senses. It already can move its jaw, make grasping motions. It is incredible to see the development of the child. You've probably heard, even some pro-lifers, but many people in the abortion movement say, oh, abortion isn't as bad in the first trimester. Morally, it's the same human life, just needs time and nourishment to grow. But when you look at the development of that child, you see humanity. Humanity is written into every single cell that that child has, and humanity is written into the markers, the milestones of his or her development. I want to show a video. Has anyone here seen the story of baby Olivia? A few of us. Okay. You're in for a treat. You're going to meet baby Olivia tonight. She is the most lifelike, medically accurate depiction of life's earliest beginnings. She was created with a team of medical experts with live action and world-class illustrators to show a peek into life into the womb. And this video can put to rest the final question of what is a human? We can play Olivia now.
This is Olivia. Though she has yet to greet the outside world, she has already completed an amazing journey. This is the moment that life begins. A new human being has come into existence. At fertilization, her gender, ethnicity, hair color, eye color, and countless traits are already determined. she begins to implant in the uterus about 1 week after fertilization. Her cells organize into what we call an embryo. At 3 weeks and 1 day, just 22 days after fertilization, Olivia's heartbeat can be detected. The buds of her arms and legs appear by 4 weeks. She begins to move between 5 and 6 weeks with both spontaneous and reflexive movements. At 6 weeks from fertilization, her brain activity can be recorded and bone formation begins. She can bring her hands together at 7.5 weeks, and separate fingers and toes emerge. She can also begin to hiccup. At the beginning of the 9th week, Olivia will have grown from a single cell into nearly 1 billion cells, and she is now called a fetus. She will suck her thumb and swallow, grasp an object, touch her face, sigh and stretch. At 11 weeks, she is playing in the womb, moving her body and exploring her environment. Her taste bud cells have matured by week 12 but are still scattered throughout her mouth. Her mother will first sense Olivia's movements between 14 and 18 weeks, an event called quickening. Beginning at 18 weeks, ultrasounds show speaking movements in her voice box. Around 20 weeks, with a lot of help, babies have survived outside the womb. At 27 weeks, her eyes are responding to light. She can recognize her parents' voices and will even recognize lullabies and stories. Olivia has gone on an amazing journey during these last 9 months. She will soon signal to her mother that it is time for delivery and greet the outside world.
And Olivia is going to be coming to a app near you on your phone, wherever you download your apps from, for fetal development. So you're going to see every single day of pregnancy. And this, you don't have to be pregnant to download the app, or you can be a dude. You get to see every single day of pregnancy. Trust me, it's a great thing if you're a guy looking to up points with ladies to really understand fetal development and understand and value pregnancy. But this app shows every single day of the baby's life, and it will be launched in a few months by Live Action, so stay tuned for that. It's clear what a human is. It's clear that human rights begin not at birth, but before. So what's the next question that we have to answer tonight? What is abortion? What is abortion? And I think I'm going to share with you what the 3 abortion procedures do, the 3 most prevalent abortion procedures do, but first some statistics. Since Roe v. Wade, which is now overruled fantastically, since Roe v. Wade was overruled, there have actually been estimated over 30,000 lives that have been saved, that children that have actually been born that would have been killed if Roe hadn't been overruled. So let's just celebrate that for a minute. And by the way, when you hear numbers like that, it can just kind of go in one ear out the other, but 30,000 children, it's a small town. It's maybe even a mid-sized town. It's 30,000 boys and girls who will have a first birthday that would have otherwise been killed because of a decision made by 9 justices. I mean, it's kind of crazy that it was up to 9 justices to even make the decision in the first place with Roe back in 1973, that men in black robes, 7 of them made this decision back in 1973. And since then, there have been over 64 million abortions. So we just celebrated 30,000 children that now have a chance to live, but we've lost 64 million children. That number can't even really be contemplated. It's so huge. Globally, the estimated abortion rate in the last decade and a half is 1.5 billion. When I talked about the greatest moral atrocity of our time, I'm talking about 2 things. I'm talking about the expanse of it, that there's been over 1 billion deaths because of this atrocity? No other single atrocity in modern times even comes close. And I'm talking about the class of victims, that these were our most vulnerable, that they're children, our most vulnerable and weak children that are in most need of protection, and that they're being killed in the place that should be the safest, which is the womb. The womb is supposed to be a place of nurture, a safe harbor, and it's become a battlefield. So Roe v. Wade has been overruled, but the death toll continues. In states like California, the death toll continues. I mentioned Gavin Newsom, our governor, and our system here is set up to celebrate and support abortion. If you're a woman in California, if you're a woman on this campus and you get you experience unplanned pregnancy, get pregnant and you're not sure what to do, and you go to your health center. I was just talking with a former student, and she was talking with her friend who's a student here, and she went to Cal State Fullerton's health center and said, hey, I think I might be pregnant, or what would I do? And they said, you can get an abortion. Let's give you an abortion. Because Gavin Newsom and our legislature has turned college campuses in this state universities and colleges, into death centers. Now the health centers here hand out the abortion pill. They hand it out, and this is now your dorms have become death chambers. Self-abortions are happening on college campuses. So this affects this school. It affects every community in this state. It affects anybody of any age, because we're living among families. We have neighbors who are considering abortions, having abortions, voting for abortions. So, abortion kills. Let's look at what abortion actually does. I want to start with a logical syllogism. This is the pro-life argument, by the way, in a nutshell. So, if somebody asks you, like, why are you pro-life? You can use this. This is 30 seconds, why pro-life? It is wrong. It is always wrong to intentionally take an innocent life. Do we all agree? Okay, it's always wrong. I mean, people, especially some people on the left and some people on the right, but especially on the left, they're even against the death penalty. Don't even take a guilty person's life, right? So we can all agree it's always wrong to take an innocent person's life, an innocent human life. It's always wrong to do that. Number two, this is a logical syllogism, so we have two premises and a conclusion. The second premise is abortion takes an innocent human life. I'm going to prove that here in a minute. Although it should kind of be obvious if the point of abortion is to terminate a pregnancy and produce a dead human. That's a successful abortion, by the way, that abortionists are paid to do, is to produce a dead human. And in fact, if they produce a live human, they've failed and they can get sued for that. Abortion takes an innocent human life. And the conclusion of this logical syllogism is, therefore, if it's always wrong to intentionally take an innocent human life, and abortion takes an innocent human life, therefore what? Abortion is always wrong. Exactly. Okay, what is abortion? I think we all agree with the logic of the logical syllogism, where people get hung up on the pro-choice side, you could say, is that, well, abortion doesn't take an innocent human life. Abortion doesn't do that. It just doesn't. Okay, well, stepping aside from the logical reality that the purpose of the abortion procedure is to terminate a pregnancy and produce a dead embryo or fetus, which is a member of the human species and is a human that has human rights, let's look at the abortion procedures. I'm going to start with the first trimester, most popular abortion procedure, which is the abortion pill. Who has seen the abortion pill in the news recently? It's been in the news a lot recently because there's a war raging politically, because during COVID, our FDA fast-tracked basically procedures so that you can telemed an abortion pill. This is like the new black market of abortion, where basically it's now legalized, where you can ship an abortion pill. You don't even have to have an ultrasound done. A woman, a girl, could be an underage girl, could be actually doing a telemed appointment with some doctor or some nurse, and can be shipped an abortion pill to her home, and can take this abortion pill and self-abort in her home. Well, what's actually happening with an abortion pill abortion? We're going to watch a short video to give you a glimpse into what this procedure actually does. Because our media today, people like our governor, again, Gavin Newsom, who's stockpiling the abortion pill, is claiming that this is women's health care. That's what they say. This is women's health care. This is women's reproductive freedom, that how dare you oppose this because this is basic women's health. And yet the reality is this does nothing to make a woman healthier. Instead, this makes her actually very sick, which we'll learn in a moment, and it kills a human life, a developing embryo. It is designed to kill. You see, mifepristone and misoprostol, which are the two drugs that are the abortion pill cocktail, the regimen that's used to kill embryos, used to kill humans. The first pill starves the child of nutrients, basically weakens the lining of the mother's uterus so that that baby can no longer get nourishment, so slowly starves that baby. And then the second abortion pill is used to force a miscarriage. And we're going to watch a video of a testimony of a young woman explaining what it was like to take the abortion pill. Over 50% of abortions in the last reported year were the abortion pill. The abortion industry loves the abortion pill because it cuts costs. They don't need brick and mortar anymore. They don't need medical staff on call at certain locations to actually sit down and review the woman, to do an assessment on her. Is she healthy? Do an ultrasound. Is she actually pregnant with a pregnancy that's actually in her uterus, or is she pregnant with an ectopic pregnancy? Because by the way, if you're a woman and you have an ectopic pregnancy, meaning the baby is not developing in your uterus, the baby is developing in your fallopian tube or somewhere else, and you take an abortion pill, you can die. You can die because you think you're miscarrying the baby, but the baby can't be miscarried the way that it would be typically with a uterine pregnancy. And that baby can be, say, remained in your body, or you could hemorrhage to death. But the only way to know that is an ultrasound, an actual medical care, which the abortion industry doesn't want to provide. Because the abortion industry wants to cut costs and wants to mainstream and desensitize people to abortion. But let's watch this video. This video is from a brand new series that Live Action actually just launched this week that is featuring the untold stories of women who actually experienced the abortion pill. Because if you look at media the way that it presents it today, and politicians, you would think that the abortion pill is just like having a period. Not a big deal. It's not even abortion. It's just like a period. But the reality is very different. So we can play the video now.
I'm 20, and it was in March last year that I found that I was pregnant. When I brought the tablets first home with me, I was about 7 weeks, but those tablets sat with me for about 3 weeks. I wanted my baby's father to just be like, no, it's all right, we can keep it. I remember the time, it was like 5 a.m. when it first started happening. It feels like you're being stabbed in the stomach. Somehow like get into the toilet, and that's when I passed my baby. And like I looked down, and I saw him, like it wasn't like a heavy period. It was like a baby. And like I looked down and I just looked up and I can't look anymore. Like it's a child, it's not, do you know what I mean? Like a bit of blood. I must have flushed the toilet. I passed my baby into the toilet. Flushed, I didn't know what I was doing, and I just remember just falling to my knees. And then I just laid in my bed, and I was just bleeding through the mattress. And I just laid there for about 3 days on my own. Just trying my hardest not to think about what was happening.
We are traumatizing a whole generation of women. That's what the abortion pill does. It's traumatizing a whole generation of women. But the sickest and saddest part is that many of these women feel that they have to protect the very people that lied to them because they carry now a secret shame or guilt or the need to double down and say what I did was the right thing. Because to face the reality of what actually happened, that this was a baby, is too painful. And if they face that reality that, yes, when I had that abortion, I ended the life of my baby, most in society would laugh at them and say, that wasn't a baby. That wasn't a baby. Abortion's good for you. Abortion's supposed to empower you. How dare you regret your abortion? Abortion regret isn't real. The abortion industry actually claims, Planned Parenthood actually claims that abortion regret, long-lasting abortion regret and trauma isn't even real. It's the ultimate abuser, right? lies to you, coerces you, tells you, have this abortion, take the life of this child, and then afterwards, when you're feeling pain afterwards, says your pain isn't even real. It didn't even happen that way. It's the greatest gaslighting trick that I think the medical establishment and the abortion industry in the medical establishment, deeply embedded, has played on American women in my lifetime, certainly, to tell us your pain doesn't even exist. And with the shame that many women feel, they don't want to talk about it, right? And so their voices are silent, and instead the loud voices that are being amplified are women or activists saying, or even men who are allies saying, well, abortion's great. I got my Golden Globe because of abortion. I got my career because of abortion. Where would I be without my abortion? But these are the voices that need to be heard, because the reality is women and men too, who've been part of abortion in the past, who dare to tell their stories, are part of the key to break free from the generational trauma that has taken place because of the abortion industry. They are the key to break free from the lies, the generational lies that have chained millions of us and that perpetuate the violence into the future. And so just a quick note, if anyone here in this room knows someone, they themselves have personally been involved with abortion, there is healing, there is freedom, there is forgiveness, and there is a role for you in the movement. Some of the best pro-life leaders and leaders of other pro-life organizations who are changing the world and saving lives have had abortions. And their regret and their experience inspired them to stand up and fight it and help save lives. So that's what the abortion pill is. That's the devastation that it is for women and what it does to a baby. What about second trimester abortion? I want to show one more video because I think it needs to be seen. I think this video needs to be played at every college campus, at every church, in every school in America. And in Congress, in the halls of every state legislature, as well as the halls of our federal Congress, because the reality is what we're about to watch, is abortion. And this is the thing that our politicians are so obsessed with protecting the eternal right to, when the reality is it is the depriving of the most fundamental right of the most weak. So we can show this video next. It is a video, not gory, but it shows through medical animation what happens during second trimester abortion. Second trimester abortion is in the spotlight in many ways because there's debates raging at the federal level right now about whether we can ban abortions at all. Even in the second trimester, can we ban abortions at 20 weeks? And crazily, an entire political party, the Democrats today, are dead set against any abortion ban. They won't even ban abortions on the child that you're about to see. And the abortion in the second trimester is, of course, a brutal act, but it's happening tens of thousands of times at minimum. This is just the reported numbers, tens of thousands of times every year in this country. It's killing more children than gun violence, this exact abortion procedure. And yet there's no conversation about the fate of these children. There's no outcry about the tools that dismember these children. And so let's watch this video. This is narrated by a former abortionist. Has anyone seen any of Dr. Anthony Levatino's videos? Okay, we've got some experts in the room. You guys are very well studied, a bunch of you, which is awesome. This is narrated by Dr. Anthony Levatino, who's a former abortionist, and he now uses his platform to spread the truth about what abortion actually is. And you can play the video now.
My name is Dr. Kathy Altman. I'm a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist with almost 33 years of experience, and I've completed over 500 abortions. Today I'm going to describe a second trimester surgical abortion called dilation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is generally performed between 14 and 22 weeks of pregnancy. Before a D&E abortion can be done, the cervix must be dilated slowly over 1 to 2 days with laminaria or a similar product. Laminaria is a type of seaweed that absorbs water and swells to several times its original diameter. When the woman undergoes the evacuation portion of the procedure, she lies on a table with her legs in stirrups. She may be given injections of local anesthetic in the cervix, IV conscious sedation, or general anesthesia. The abortionist uses a speculum to open the vagina and uses an instrument to stabilize the cervix. Metal dilators may be used to further open the cervix if needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, a cannula attached to suction tubing is placed inside the uterus. The suction machine is then turned on and the amniotic fluid surrounding the fetus is suctioned out. The fetus is too large to fit through the cannula, so he or she must be removed in pieces with a clamp such as this Sofer clamp. A Sofer clamp is made of stainless steel and is about 13 inches long. At the tip, there are rows of teeth for grasping. The abortionist reaches into the uterus with the clamp and tries to grasp an arm or leg. Once the abortionist has a firm grip, she pulls forcefully in order to remove the limb. Piece by piece, the abortionist removes the arms and legs, followed by the head or the body, including the torso and pelvis, along with the intestines, the heart, and the lungs. The placenta is also removed. If the cervix has been overdilated, the body or even the entire fetus may be pulled out intact. Usually, the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the fetus's head, which at 20 weeks is about the size of a large plum. The abortionist must open the clamp widely to grasp the head, and then crush it so that it will fit through the cervix. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance, the fetus's brains, leaks out through the cervix. The abortionist then removes the compressed head. Any remaining limbs, organs, bone fragments, or pieces of placenta not removed with the forceps are removed by scraping the uterine lining with a large curette or by reinserting the suction cannula. The abortionist then reassembles the fetal parts to make sure that there is nothing left inside the uterus, which could cause infection or bleeding. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the bleeding has been controlled, and all the instruments have been removed from the vagina, the abortion is considered complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a risk of major complications, including perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, with possible damage to bowel, bladder, or other maternal organs. Infection and hemorrhage can also occur, which can lead to death. Future pregnancies are also at an increased risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related physical trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned at the beginning, I used to perform abortions. At the time, I truly believed I was helping women. After the birth of my daughter, however, I realized that abortion doesn't just end a pregnancy, it kills an innocent human being. Such terms as zygote, embryo, or fetus are simply terms that refer to age, like infant, toddler, and adult, and do nothing to diminish the humanity of the child. As I cared for women in my OBGYN practice, I also learned how abortion harms women. I stopped doing abortions because I could no longer kill babies just because they were unwanted. I am now a pro-life advocate. I am proof that anyone can change, no matter who they are or what they've done. I invite you to join me and make a decision to protect the preborn. Thank you for watching.
Just last Friday, another late-term abortionist passed away, Leroy Carhart. Has anyone heard of Leroy Carhart? Leroy Carhart, unlike Dr. Kathy Altman, never changed his mind, never changed his ways. And he was dismembering and giving lethal injections to preborn infants, even months up until his death. He died in his late 80s, but by the time of his death, Carhart had murdered tens of thousands of children. At his death, Planned Parenthood mourned, and their president, Alexis McGill, tweeted about what a noble defender of women Carhart had been. But the reality of his legacy is that he leaves behind the dead bodies of thousands of children that never had a chance to be born, never had a chance to live their lives. One of our undercover investigators a few years ago sat down with Leroy Carhart, a friend of mine, a very brave mom, a first-time mom. She was 23 weeks pregnant with her first child. And this live-action investigator sat down with Leroy Carhart and asked him what it was like. What is abortion like? And he told her that it was like using a toolkit to rip apart something, that you kind of have a chainsaw and you kind of have a pickaxe and you have a drill bit. And they said, well, is there any chance the baby would survive the abortion? And Carhart said, I'd have better luck standing in front of a semi-truck that's coming at me 100 miles per hour than this baby will. And the craziest thing is that Carhart called his victim a baby. He knew. And that's the thing, many know. Many today know. They know what you just saw. They know what they're doing. And even in the pro-choice world, some people know, some don't. And we need to persuade them. But many know. They know it's a baby and they don't care. And that's why laws matter. That's why laws matter, to hold back the worst excesses of the human heart that's willing to do evil, even when they know it's evil. And that's why we have to fight, not just to change hearts and minds, but to change laws. And so what's our responsibility? We talked about what a human being is, what abortion is. It's clear. So what's our response? What do we do in response? And there's 3 things I want to encourage you to do. Number 1, take a stand. Take a stand and be unapologetically against the killing of innocent lives at any point for any reason. Be unapologetically anti-abortion. And your conviction, your willingness to not apologize for speaking and standing for what is right will inspire others. It might ruffle feathers or make waves at first, but I guarantee you it will inspire other people who deep down know the truth and deep down maybe are afraid to acknowledge it or admit it or state it. But your willingness to stand up for the most vulnerable, to stand up against the most violent acts committed against children today that have been legalized, will inspire others. So be 100% against abortion. Have a zero tolerance policy for the destruction of innocent lives, including and especially the lives that are being destroyed in the womb. And we have to urge this for our lawmakers too. We have to urge this for people who advocate in our leaders to say, listen, all of this compromise, the language of compromise, let's ban abortion at 20 weeks. No, if you've got the votes, do more. Florida is an example of this. Governor DeSantis won his re-election in a landslide as governor of Florida. They had a 15-week abortion ban. Okay, a 15-week abortion ban is a step towards progress, but there are thousands of children, and especially in the South right now, there are thousands of women and men that are driving them that are going to Florida as an abortion destination to kill children up to 15 weeks. And so Florida took another step in the right direction by banning abortion after 6 weeks. The baby at 6 weeks, as you saw, baby Olivia, at 6 weeks, the heart's already beating, but that's not enough either. Are we going to acknowledge reality of when human life begins, or are we going to pretend that some human lives are subhuman? And so we have to be unapologetic about calling for the protection of all children, and also acknowledge that our Constitution says this already. Our 14th Amendment has an equal protection clause in it that says that we all deserve equal protection under the law, and that no state has the right to deprive anyone of life without due process. There's no due process for the 5-week-old embryo. There's no due process for the 20-week-old baby. There's no due process for a child in the womb today. Obviously, they're innocent. There's no justification to kill them in any court anyways. And so we need to be unapologetic in opposing abortion and saying every life needs to be protected. And we need to be unapologetic in stating the truth that abortion does not advance women. This is a complete lie that's been shoved down our throats, that abortion actually pits us against our own children. As Mother Teresa says, it creates a destruction of peace. It destroys peace. It creates disharmony in the place that should be the safest, the womb, in the bond that should be the most tender between a mother and her child, between a parent and their child. And so reject the lie that abortion is good for women. Secondly, we need to change our attitude about family and children. Gen Zers are increasingly hopeless about family life. Increasingly, Gen Zers don't want to have children. They think it's going to destroy the environment. They think climate change is going to doom us all, so why even have children? They think, why get married? We're just going to divorce. There's a hopelessness that has settled in on Gen Zers and on many millennials that says it's not even worth it. It's kind of giving up on love. It's giving up on family, and it's giving up on our future, which is children. And I want to challenge you to embrace the very things that many today are giving up on, and instead see that our purpose in life as human beings is love, and that we find love in relationship. We don't find love in career. We don't find love in personal pursuits. We don't find love in just traveling the world by ourselves. We don't find love in money. We don't find love in fashion. Ultimately, these can be beautiful things or good things, but ultimately we find love in relationship. And we find the most meaningful bonds of love in family. The family that we're given and the family that we choose. And so I want to encourage you to choose family. I want to encourage you to choose love. And I want to encourage you to get married. Get married. Do the work, obviously. Prepare to be as healthy as you can and prepared as you can, but find love and keep it. And with that love, be passionate and positive about children. Children are amazing. I'm blessed with 2 little boys. They've changed my life. I hope to have many more. I hope to get to at least 6, 7 kids. I'm one of 8, so the more the merrier. And I promise they will not hurt our planet. They will make our planet more beautiful than ever. As Mother Teresa says, how can anyone say there are too many children? It's like saying there are too many flowers. What's more beautiful than a flower? A child. Children are the most beautiful. So celebrate love and keep it. Fight for family, fight for children, and be unapologetic about the love that you have for family, marriage, and children. And then finally, use your privilege to empower others. Every single person in this room has an incredible privilege. You're born. You survived abortion. You weren't one of the 1/3 almost of our generation that was killed post Roe v. Wade by abortionists. That's privilege right there. You made it out alive. You are alive. You have endless possibilities in front of you of what you can do with your one beautiful life. Use it well. Use it well. Use it to fight for the vulnerable. Use it to care about the things that really matter. Use it to serve other people. Use it to find those that need help and go out to help them. There's some great practical ways to do this. Pregnancy centers are places that serve mothers, young families, and children, especially those that are abortion vulnerable. Find the pregnancy centers in your area and support them, volunteer at them, donate to them, find out how you can serve them. If you know a single mom, many of us do, find out how you can help her. Send her a DoorDash gift certificate. Show up if you know her and ask her when you can show up. Obviously, don't just show up at her door. It might be creepy, but ask her when you can show up and clean her house, clean her apartment. Ask her what she needs. Get to know her, serve her, love her. She's doing something heroic. She's raising a human being without the help that she deserves. So try to be some of that help. There's a way to get involved in serving foster children. If you are a single person, instead of fostering to adopt them or fostering them, you can actually be an advocate for them. Find out how you can support foster children in your community. You can go through a 6-month, I think it's about a 6-month training program to be a child advocate. Find ways to serve. Find ways to love. Use your privilege to empower others. And I guarantee you that when we do that, when we use the one beautiful life that we each have been blessed with to serve others, our life becomes more rewarding, more rich, more meaningful than we could have imagined otherwise. Thank you all so much, and I'm excited for questions.
I was wondering because it seems like you're very the Constitution is protecting these unborn babies. The argument is that because the unborn is not enumerated within the Constitution, they shouldn't be protected. Do you think that the court has the power to protect the unborn? Because should this power be given to the states, or should it be the court that says, no more abortion because the court should be upholding the Constitution. That's their duty.
So the unborn child is protected under the Constitution because they're human. The Constitution talks about humans and citizens and non-citizens, but basically humans. And so whether you're a human that's a citizen, you're a preborn child that's a citizen, you're not going to be a citizen until you're born, so you're going to be a non-citizen, you're protected as a non-citizen. The 14th Amendment would protect you as a non-citizen. So 100% already protected. And it's not up to the states to decide who lives and dies. So I think there's this false notion in politics today that, oh, we leave it to the states. You know, President Trump, unfortunately, just came out and said, oh, it should be a states' rights issue. Imagine saying that murder should be a states' rights issue. Rape should be a states' rights issue. Slavery, oh, that sounds familiar, should be a states' rights issue. No, you shouldn't get to enslave somebody just because you live in California instead of living in Texas. You shouldn't get to rape somebody or murder somebody because you live in California versus Texas. So it doesn't matter what state you live in. It's not up to the democracy, the legislative body or the governor or any elected or unelected politician to decide the fate of an innocent person to say that they can die. That's mob rule, and it's an injustice. So every state has a responsibility, in fact, to protect its citizens against homicide, and abortion is a form of homicide.
Before I ask any questions, out of curiosity, can I ask multiple questions in a row, or is it just one question?
Let's start with one. Maybe we'll do one at a time.
All right.
Does that work?
So the fundamental argument would be that, or I noticed that you said a baby is an innocent life and the taking of innocent life is always wrong, and therefore abortion is wrong. And I would agree with that. After all, the taking of an innocent life is always wrong. But in the eyes of the law, it's not necessarily unacceptable. For example, I noticed that you used the example of a person on life support. Like when someone's on life support or in a coma, they're still considered lives in the eyes of the law, but you can always pull the plug on them. And in that same way, would your argument change if abortion became less about mothers killing babies and more about mothers no longer supporting babies in ways where their babies were bound to die?
No. And first of all, there are laws that regulate in the medical system when it's appropriate to remove somebody from certain medical support that they may be given. Taking someone from life support, removing someone from life support is not the same as going and stabbing that person in the heart with a knife. But abortion is the direct and intentional killing, and in some cases, stabbing the child in the heart with a needle in a late-term abortion. So the difference is very important between removing life support and going and intentionally destroying a child's body, which is what the abortion procedures do.
So for the sake of argument, hypothetically, let's say that abortion stopped being like taking apart the baby, like the video that was very graphic, but rather, let's say there was a new type of abortion that was formed where, or like you said, the pill that caused the baby to starve, or the doctors cut the umbilical cord, causing the baby to no longer receive nutrients. So let's say that abortion became less about killing the baby and more about not supporting it. The same way you're pulling the plug on life support. Would you think that that's different, or would you say that that's also wrong? And if that's the case, why is it different?
I mean, the bottom line is this: parents, if they do not feed their children, like if you're a parent of a newborn and you refuse to feed your child, you can be charged with criminal neglect. Similarly, if you, I think in your argument, you eject the child by force because you don't want to feed them anymore from your womb, that is an act of violence against them to deprive them of nutrients. So I think that the distinction is very important, that an abortion is designed to kill. It's designed to produce a dead child, and that's what we're fighting against.
So are you advocating for the protection of all innocent lives? Like
100%.
I would assume that by the same argument, you would advocate for the government to fund the continuing support of all medical life support and foster care and all of these things, right?
So I think there's an important ethical distinction between extraordinary measures in a medical setting, like if you're in a hospital and you're on extraordinary measures for life support, and the ethical considerations of, is it time to remove these extraordinary measures versus the way that we all started life, which was in the womb. That's not an extraordinary measure. That's the natural space that the embryo or the fetus belongs, that you as a human being belong before birth. You're supposed to be there, and you have the right to nutrients, just like you have the right to nutrients when you're born.
But the things that a mother goes through while pregnancy, we can both agree that that's an immense sacrifice, right? My mother carried me for 9 months, and that's so much more than I can ever ask for. And that's something that all mothers have to go through. You have to carry the baby, it becomes heavy, you have to eat more, there's a lot of mood shifts, hormones, and then you have to give birth, which is absolutely horrible for the mother in most situations. It's very painful, very long, and there's a lot of suffering. And when she endures it, there's the gift of life, but all of that is all immense sacrifice that I would argue is an extraordinary measure, right? Almost the same as paying like 80K a year to keep your family on life support. And furthermore, don't you also have a responsibility to support your family? Like if my parents were ever in a coma, I would argue that I'm just as much indebted to them and supporting them as they are indebted to supporting me when I was in the womb.
I think mothers are amazing. I think mothers that go through pregnancy are amazing. And they deserve support and love. And by the way, it's Mother's Day coming up, so make sure to thank your mother. And you know who I also think are amazing are mothers of newborns. And I don't know if you've ever been a mother of a well, you haven't been a mother of a newborn, or maybe a father. By the way, if you're a father of a newborn, you should do this. You're up some nights, all night. You're breastfeeding. You might get mastitis. You have just not just given your body to that baby before birth, but you're giving that body to your baby after birth, and you are sleep deprived. You are working your butt off to care for that child and love that child. And it would be criminal neglect for you to just set that child in its bassinet and leave the house for 10 days and not look back. Because we have a responsibility as adults, as mothers or fathers, to care for the child before and after birth. I think we're time for the next question.
Hey, Lila, my name is Pablo Sorrentidis. I go to high school at Modern Day High School, just 20 minutes away. When I have this conversation with a lot of the students at my high school, they bring up the situation of, early pregnancies, women that wouldn't be able to take care of their babies, right? A lot of them feel that abortion is the only way out, right? It's a very dim situation for them, and it's very difficult to make. And a lot of them believe that abortion is wrong, but like I said, they believe that it's the only option available to them. And even to what you talked about in your speech, right? Where you said even the health centers here in the school, when women go to them and say, hey, I'm pregnant, what do they bring up to them? Oh, here, just take this pill. Right. And my question to you would just be, what could we tell to these women that believe that that is the only option? I know that you brought up pregnancy centers, but could you speak a little bit more about that, please?
Of course. Anyone who's pregnant deserves support, whether you're young, you're older, no matter your circumstances, because being a mother, I believe in being a father, but particularly a mother of a young child, is the most important job in a civilization, because you are bringing the future of that civilization into existence. And so if you're especially a young mother like you're describing, I would say she needs support. And I don't know the exact circumstances. I think you're using a hypothetical, but that's why we have thousands of pregnancy centers in this country that provide free care before birth and after birth for especially young single moms who need that support. And I would encourage people, if they're involved in churches or faith communities, to make sure that you're getting involved with those resources that are serving young families, that are making sure that those young families have the support that they deserve, whether it's free care for diapers or wipes or food or baby gear, or making sure that after the birth, the mother has access to maternity leave and she's able to get the care that she needs. So I think maternity leave, paid family leave is essential from the government perspective, what the government side should do. We should make birth free in this country. I think that's a no-brainer. So there's public policy things to do, and then there's just a lot of private, nonprofit work that is happening that's not getting marketing support from the media. The media doesn't talk about it, but we should be aware of it and make sure to connect women to those resources. Thank you.
Hi, Lila. Thank you for your time. So first, as many of us know, South Carolina and Nebraska failed to pass pro-life legislation. So first, why do you believe conservative states are failing to take action now that Roe v. Wade was overturned? And second, what should our response be?
Well, in the midterms, this is an example of the landscape politically. You mentioned Nebraska. In the midterms, the pro-life side was outspent by $1 to $40. So for every $40 that the pro-abortion side spent on advertising, the pro-life side spent $1. Post Roe v. Wade, unfortunately, I think the pro-life movement, there was a moment where we won. It's like, no, The fight has just begun. It's time to fight right now. And so I would chalk that up to complacency and a lack of investment. And that's where we need to get in the fight and say, listen, put the money in, put the time in, volunteer, get activated, because the opposition, nothing activates like a loss. And the opposition just lost really big last year with Dobbs v. Jackson. And so we have to be just as galvanized, more galvanized than the pro-abortion side. Thank you.
Hello. I was just wondering, do you think the death penalty is ever okay?
So I am personally opposed to the death penalty. And I know that there's many people in here who may disagree, and you're, of course, free to do that. I think you can be anti-abortion and for or opposed to the death penalty, and that can be a worldview that you possess. But no, I think in a civilized country where we have incarceration for our whole life and no possibility of escape for predators, I don't think we should be taking lives into our hands in that way.
Also, if it's in your book, you can just tell me so. But what was your journey to becoming Catholic? I think you converted to Catholicism, right?
I did convert to Catholicism. I became Catholic as oh, nice. Some Catholics here. I became Catholic as a UCLA student, actually, when I was in college. And lots of things led up to that decision, best decision of my life. I would chalk it up to a combination of intellectual persuasion, learning about what the church actually teaches, not what people say it teaches, but like reading, the catechism, what it actually teaches. Thomas Aquinas, the doctor of the church who explains what the church teaches and why. And just being very convicted and convinced, like, wow, this makes so much sense and it's so beautiful too. And then that with coming to believe that the Eucharist was what the church says it was, what Jesus says it is, that this is my body, this is my blood, this is the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. And believing that, you're like, okay, I really want to be close to Jesus in this way and get to receive him in the Eucharist. So that's kind of the 60-second version. But we have a lot. Let Life Action, we have people of different backgrounds, Protestant, Catholic, non, and I think the movement's very beautiful and strong in that we have a lot of folks from different faith backgrounds or none. So that's my story. But I embrace and celebrate all the different people from different backgrounds in our movement. Thank you.
Hello, Lila. So in the civil rights movement, you had like Rosa Parks who refused to leave, the bus, and you had people do sit-ins, and you had people refusing to leave diners as a form of civil disobedience. So I want to ask you, what is your opinion on rescues? For those of you who don't know what a rescue is when it's a form where we would go inside an abortion clinic. We give roses to women, and then we tell women that there are other options that does not include killing their babies, and then we peacefully leave. Sometimes we talk to the staff and try to get them to quit. That a lot of people say that's illegal, it's trespassing. However, we believe that it is a form that is necessary to save babies. A lot of babies have been saved that way. So what is your opinion?
I think you're heroes. I'm a huge fan. Thank you. I think it's necessary, and it's courageous, and it's loving, and I think it's insane when those that do this loving, necessary work are painted as some kind of a monster by media. They are actually peacefully, lovingly putting their bodies in between the abortionist forceps and children, and lives have been saved. Women have turned around because they're like, wow, if these people care this much that they would risk their own safety by coming into this abortion clinic, even just to hand me a pamphlet to tell me about other options I have besides real choice, besides abortion. Women are just moved by that. And they think, wow, maybe there are other options for me, and this person really cares. And I think we should care like that. Thank you.
Hi, Lila. Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just want to congratulate you because you are leading a war, and you're so brave, and you're inspiring so many people. And I'm so happy to see many men here. I thought it was going to be only women. And I follow you, and thank you. You inspire so many people, and we're winning, and we're going to win.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lila. I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm a big fan. I'd like to ask, so the issue of abortion is often depicted by a lot of people on the pro-choice side as having broad consensus and broad support among all Americans. I think a common number they use is that the Pew Research number that 60% of Americans are okay with abortion or think there really shouldn't be like too many restrictions on it. What would you say is something that we as members of the pro-life community can do to better convince people to join our side?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, don't believe what the media's picture is because they are misleading you. The reality is, as an example, in Florida, they just passed the heartbeat law protecting babies after 6 weeks. Did you know that the majority of Floridians, 62%, support that law? 62% of Floridians. This is a purple state. And the majority of Democrats, I think it's 54% of Democrats in Florida support that law. Did you know that? Most people don't know these numbers because they think based on media narratives that everyone's pro-abortion and loves abortion and thinks it's great. And it's not true. So I think that's the first step, is acknowledging that we are being lied to incessantly by media groups. So don't buy the lies. A lot more people agree than disagree. And I would just say keep out there, sharing the truth, getting involved in the pro-life movement, being active, because that's in the end what's going to win the fight, is our action and us willing to stand up. Thank you.
Hi, Lila. I wanted to ask, I read the book "Why We Can't Wait" by Martin Luther King last year, and it was I was wondering how, which is the book is basically Martin Luther King's his documentation of the pinnacle of the civil rights movement, summer of 1963, and he was saying the different things they were doing that was really at the climactic point, sit-ins and actually boycotts, things like that. Would you say we're at when would we be at a point to do things like that in this movement?
Now. I think there's already activism like that. There is already activism like that happening. We were just live action. I don't know if anyone was there with us in Dana Point at the hotel. Oh, a couple friends. And we just did some activism. And as an example to peacefully disrupt Walgreens shareholder meeting because they were deciding about selling the abortion pill, becoming an abortion clinic, basically. And Walgreens right now, anyways, is not selling the abortion clinic because there's been a lot of activism like that happening. So I think peaceful disruptions, sit-ins, rescues are very important in the pro-life movement, and I encourage people to get involved with that. Know your legal rights, obviously. Have an attorney. Live Action works with some great pro bono legal groups. Make sure you have good legal representation, but I would say be an activist.
Also, with an earlier question, they were saying that, I'm not sure, or someone said or I think it was the media being against the pro-life movement. So with the civil rights movement, I'm not really sure the history, but how do you think that we can get more of the media on our side?
It's a good question. I think the only answer is to become the media. Because we're not going to persuade some of the most hardcore pro-aborts by just doing our everyday work. I mean, we pray for them. I pray for Gavin Newsom. I pray for, some of these folks. But the reality is we can become the media. And many of us are. Social media, we can become independent media creators. Live Action's a media platform. Many people are starting media companies. I'm working on starting another media company called GTB Media. I think we need to become the media because that's the way forward. Thank you.
Hi, Lila. Thank you very much for coming out today, and I really enjoyed your speech, and I learned a lot. Thank you. My question is, you said earlier you recommended that men should get married, and
women.
Yeah, women
not just
too,
men,
obviously.
but yeah.
And thousands of young men like me, we want to get married, but we're all afraid of losing our children and our livelihoods if we suddenly discover our wives cheating on us and they decide to divorce us and lie about us successfully in court. It happened to multiple men I know on a personal level. Some of them actually lost their homes. They can't see their children until they turn 18. And some of them have even had to live in their cars for like 5 years just because they lost half their income because their wives decided to lie about them. This has led to a lot of men going their own way. Some people call it the MGTOW movement. Are you familiar with that? Okay. What is your response to these men who are afraid of getting married, who fear they will lose everything they have, their wives cheat on them, lie about them in court, then divorce them to go on and ruin their lives?
If you're a man that thinks women at large are like that, I don't think you should get married. But I want to encourage you that women at large isn't really a thing, that there are bad women and there are good women, as there are bad men and there are good men. And I would encourage you to get involved with groups of people where they're pursuing virtue together. Often this is a faith community. And you really get to know her well and work on becoming the best man you can be and get to know her well in a community setting and really choose and discern your life partner well as you yourself work on your own personal development. But at the end of the day, marriage is I believe, a sacred covenant. It's a bond. And so it involves sacrifice. It involves the unexpected. And so I think the reality is if you're not willing to embrace the unexpected and be willing to sacrifice and ready to sacrifice and know marriage is not the right thing for you, for that person. Thank you.
Hello. I would like to ask, what are your thoughts on contraceptives, such as a condom? Because I feel like a good way to prevent abortion is just to not have a baby in the first place,
Well, I think I'd go a step back and I would say if you're not ready to be a parent, then I don't think you should be engaging in the activity that is by design what creates new human lives. So that would be my response. Condoms don't always work. Birth control certainly doesn't always work. And so the way to eradicate abortion overnight is if we as adults took personal responsibility and said, hey, we're not going to have short-term sexual pleasure if we're not ready for the lives that short-term sexual pleasure can bring into existence. And instead, we're going to organize our sexual lives in the right way, which has to do with commitment, love, marriage, and an openness to life. And then watch abortion disappear.
Oh, hello. My question is, how do you respond to someone that says who is a victim of rape and says abortion is the only answer to that because it wasn't their choice to have the child?
So great question. Thank you for asking it. Women who suffer the violence of rape, it's a horrific, horrific thing. Our society needs to care and support women in these situations, victims of sexual assault. And the criminal, the person responsible, needs to be held accountable, needs to suffer the consequences. We shouldn't make the innocent third party that might be conceived, that preborn child, be the one to suffer the consequences. We don't even give the death penalty to rapists in this country. It's against federal law. So why would we give the death penalty to an unborn child simply because their father is a sexual abuser? And in addition to that, I would say, listen, women who experience sexual assault are not healed by abortion. It's this weird mythology that the media pushes, this narrative that a woman who has a sexual assault and gets pregnant, she should have an abortion. Abortion's traumatizing. Abortion's an act of violence against her child, and a second, I believe, act of violence against her, and it doesn't take away the violence of the rape. It's not an unraping of that woman. It's just another act of violence now against her child. Thank you.
Hello, Lila. My name is Michael. I'm a senior here at Fullerton. I wanted to read to you a post from Titan Well. They are the health promotion services on campus. This was posted on their Instagram, December 7th of 22. I wanted to bring it to your attention, and then I wanted a follow-up question about it. So the post, it's 3 pictures and this caption. I'll read it all. Stressed about finals? De-stress with sex. Grab a partner or go solo. Studies have shown that sex and masturbation are great ways to reduce stress. They both release hormones essential to relaxation and stress reduction. So then the caption. Finals are quickly approaching, Titans. If you ever need a way to de-stress, consider sex or masturbation as a way to increase dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. So my question is, I think there's a massive culture shift in making everyone more promiscuous, which I think is equally important for fighting for life, as your speech is about. So if you had to value one over the other, that being changing the culture versus changing the policy, which one do you think is more important? Also, I don't think you really talked about how we could change the culture to make people more personally responsible and not promiscuous. So could you please give us some ideas on how you could change that culture for a younger audience?
Well, first of all, I just think it's so crazy and kind of grossly hilarious, I guess. I don't know that they would post that, because even if you are like into promiscuity, is that going to like get you all excited? Some Instagram post from your like professor of like boss at UC at Fullerton saying you should go have sex now? Like it's just weird. It's super weird. It's like a pervert wrote that post and thinking it's cool. So listen, I think the number one way we can push back against promiscuity culture in this country is by living the values and the virtues that are ultimately noble and that other people can't help but admire. I think that's the number one way to change culture. It's how we ourselves choose to live. The number two way to change culture is when you're choosing to live that way, to do it joyfully, be happy about it. You know, like the happy virgin or the happy second again, born again virgin or whatever, like be happy about it. Be happy about your life, whatever your life is, like be joyful and grateful for the life that you have and how you're living it, because people are not going to want to live the way that we live virtue, if we're living it with annoyance or with grumpiness or with frustration or whatever. If we're just like mean, people are not going to like that, obviously. So I think just live the virtues and the values that you would want in a spouse in the future, and that we want to see more of in society. And if enough of us do that, I think society will change. Thank you.
Hi, Lila. I've been practicing the Catholic faith for 5 years. I was baptized Catholic, but I took it seriously for the past 5 years. My question to you is, should pro-choice Catholics like Joe Biden be denied communion? And what should we do if, let's say, we have a family member or a friend that goes to mass with us and we forgot that claim to be pro-choice, but we forgot to mention that they shouldn't receive communion, but they're already in line?
Well, first off, a little inside baseball. If you are Joe Biden, you're not, no one here is, but Joe Biden has already excommunicated himself. So he has chosen to separate himself from the church by prolifically and passionately endorsing abortion and defending it. So it's not that so much that he's being deprived of it as he is depriving himself, and it's not the role of any priest, and certainly no bishop, to give him, he's being given communion. And they don't have the right to give him communion when he has separated himself from the right to receive it. So I think that's an important thing. And if you have family who is, it's a little different with a private citizen versus a public citizen. So these things get complicated because we can't read someone's soul, right? We know President Biden has been unrepentant. He continues to do the thing and advocate for abortion. So when it comes with someone in your personal life, you can't really be in their mind and in their heart unless every day they're posting to, Facebook, I support abortion, haha, I'm going to receive communion. Okay, it's kind of clear, right? So I would just caution you, because with friends and family, we don't fully know their hearts, but you could live, a good life yourself and encourage them, say, hey, I'm going to confession this week, you want to come? Continue to talk to them about the faith. But at the end of the day, obviously, we don't police each other, right? We love each other and we serve each other and we speak truth. And, if you're really concerned that they are receiving communion unworthily, because that damns their soul, that really hurts your soul if you do that. You could sit them down and be like, hey, I'm really concerned about you because it's bad for your soul. It's really hardening for your soul. So I'm concerned. You could have that conversation with them. Just some thoughts. Thank you.
This next question will be our last question. Hello, my name is Jared, and usually when I engage with conversations usually engage in these conversations, people usually bring up very emotional and heavy topics. And I just wanted to ask you how you would tackle when someone asks, I know you touched upon rape, but I wanted to see how you would feel about, I think it's called carry to bury. Basically, you carry a child that would would it make it that far past in life, or a child that has some sort of deformity that would require the parent to basically take care of it for the rest of its life.
Any parent of a child that's diagnosed with terminal illness, at least most of them are carrying to bury, whether they're born or preborn. And I would say the same thing as I would say to a mother or a father of a 3-year-old that's been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Because your child may die or is very likely to die of this condition doesn't mean it's right to kill that child. And that child deserves to live as long as that child may live and receive the loving care of his or her family for as long as he or she can receive it. So the abortionist tools or lethal injection is not love, it's not mercy. Somehow we've gotten in this weird mindset where we think if you're before birth, abortion doesn't hurt you. I mean, like abortion procedure is brutally painful, especially in the later trimester, and it's an act of violence. It's homicide against that child. So I would say give that child a chance, give that child palliative care. There's ways to give a child with terminal illness even before birth care, and then certainly after birth care, so that they can the pain can be as alleviated as possible, but you don't solve sickness by killing the person who's sick. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all.